Dear friends, welcome to our channel. We are very happy to share with you different stories of love and betrayal from around the world. So let's begin our story journey today. Spring in Paris is always so intoxicating. The Eiffel Tower shines with golden light under the sun, the plane trees along the Seine gently sway, and the aroma of coffee wafts from roadside cafes. But in an upscale restaurant near the Champs-Élysées, this tranquility is about to be broken. Dear everyone, thank you for coming to celebrate my retirement. Marcel stands in the center of the restaurant, smiling around with a champagne glass in hand. As Provence's most famous perfumer, his retirement party has attracted almost all the important figures in the French perfume world. At 63, Marcel wears a deep blue custom suit, his silver-white temples and warm smile making him appear both dignified and approachable. For 40 years, I have been pursuing the mysteries of scent, trying to transform nature's gifts into bottled works of art, Marcel says, his gaze sweeping across every guest, finally resting on his wife Colette. Sitting in the front row, Colette wears a champagne-colored evening gown, smiling gracefully. At 60, she is the beauty director of the luxury brand Lumiere, and her well-maintained appearance makes her look much younger than her actual age. She elegantly raises her glass, nodding to her husband. However, just as Marcel is about to continue his thank you speech, Colette suddenly stands up. With a hint of barely noticeable coldness at the corners of her mouth, she walks straight to Marcel's side. Dear everyone, Colette gently takes the microphone from Marcel's hand, her voice calm to the point of indifference. I would like to take this opportunity to announce something. As Marcel ends his career, I have decided to end our marriage. The venue instantly falls into dead silence. The guests look at each other in disbelief, unable to trust their ears. For 35 years, I've had enough of ordinary life. Colette continues, her tone carrying a hint of relief. It's time to pursue real passion. All eyes turn to Marcel, anticipating his anger or grief. However, unexpectedly, Marcel still wears a calm smile on his face. I completely understand, dear, Marcel says softly, taking out a small remote control from his pocket. Actually, I also have something I want to share with everyone. A large screen on one side of the restaurant lights up. The screen shows scenes of Colette intimately dining with an Asian man in an upscale restaurant, followed by images of them embracing in a luxury hotel lobby, and finally a close-up of them kissing on a private yacht. Colette's smile freezes. The man on the screen is Kazuki, CEO of Everglow, a Japanese cosmetics giant. At 53, he is handsome and tall, known in business circles for his sharp business acumen and ruthless competitive strategies. I believe your relationship has been going on for 8 months now, hasn't it? Marcel calmly asks, his gaze firmly fixed on his wife. Since the Milan Fashion Week last year? Colette's face turns pale. She is speechless, able only to stand frozen in place. Meanwhile, the restaurant doors are pushed open, and several reporters quietly slip in. This originally private retirement party suddenly becomes a carefully planned public exposure. Marcel picks up the microphone again, his voice still calm. As you wish, our marriage ends here. But before I leave, I have one last gift for you and your new partner. He turns to the screen, clicking the remote to switch to the next slide. It's a detailed chemical formula, dense with molecular structures and proportion data. This is the complete formula for the Eternite perfume that I've spent my life developing. Colette and Kazuki have secretly planned to replicate it as Everglow's flagship product for next spring. Marcel looks around, his gaze sharp. Now, it belongs to everyone. Reporters quickly take photos and record, and the venue once again falls into chaos. Just 6 months ago, Marcel had no awareness of his wife's changes. As Lumiere's chief perfumer, he had been immersed in his own aromatic world. Not that he neglected his family. In fact, he and Colette arranged date nights every week and took at least 2 vacations each year. However, perhaps it was precisely this regulated life that made Colette feel suffocated. What have you been thinking about lately? Marcel asked that evening. They were enjoying dinner on the balcony of their apartment by the Seine. Colette took a light sip of red wine, thoughtful. Have you ever thought about what we should do after retirement? We could go to the countryside in Provence. I've always wanted to open a small studio, Marcel said with a smile. Teach young people perfumery, occasionally create custom perfumes for special clients. Provence again. Colette sighed. For 40 years, your world has always revolved around perfume. That's where my passion lies, Marcel frowned. I thought you understood this. I understand. But I'm also tired. Colette put down her wine glass. I want more. More excitement. More changes. That conversation ended in silence. Marcel thought it was just a minor episode of midlife crisis, but he was wrong. Looking back, Marcel realized that signs of change had long existed. Colette began to frequently attend social events without inviting him along. She purchased a batch of new clothes, started using new perfumes, and even changed the hairstyle she had maintained for 20 years. But as someone focused on the world of scents, Marcel overlooked these visual signals. You've changed a lot lately, Marcel's assistant Elise said one evening as they worked overtime to prepare new samples. What do you mean? Marcel asked, not lifting his head as he adjusted the liquid proportions in the test tubes. Always absent-minded, Elise said softly. As if your body is here, but your thoughts have drifted elsewhere. Just pre-retirement stress, Marcel said dismissively. But deep inside, he knew Elise was right. He felt Colette gradually drifting away, yet didn't know how to win her back. During Milan Fashion Week, Colette met Kazuki. As the helmsman of Everglow, Kazuki was seeking an opportunity to enter the European high-end perfume market. When he learned that Colette was the wife of legendary perfumer Marcel, he saw an opportunity. I like your confidence, Kazuki told Colette as they dined at a Michelin restaurant in Milan. Having been in this industry for so long, you still remain full of vitality. Colette was attracted by this kind of praise. Over the years, although Marcel loved her, his compliments were always flat and lacking passion. Kazuki, however, made her feel young and appreciated. My husband thinks I only care about sales figures and market share. Colette took a sip of whiskey. He doesn't understand my desire to explore. That's a pity. Kazuki's hand gently covered hers. A woman like you should be encouraged to explore, not trapped in a predetermined role. And so, an extramarital affair began. At first, Colette told herself it was just a spiritual connection seeking understanding. But soon, the boundaries of emotion and physicality were also broken. Kazuki was not acting purely out of emotion. As a shrewd businessman, he knew that Marcel was about to retire, and the formula for Eternite perfume would be the pinnacle of his career. If he could obtain this formula through Colette, Everglow would gain a decisive advantage in the high-end perfume market. We can create miracles together, Kazuki told Colette at a private club in Paris. Your market insight and my resources, plus your husband's formula, we will redefine the luxury perfume market. Marcel will never share that formula. Colette shook her head. It's his life's work. He may not share it voluntarily, but as his wife, you have ways. Kazuki's eyes grew sharp. Think about it. This isn't just for us, it's also for yourself. This will be your chance to escape his shadow. Colette began looking for clues in Marcel's studio. Although Marcel noticed his wife's sudden interest in his work, he mistakenly thought this was her way of wanting to understand him better. You've been coming to the studio often lately, Marcel said gently. Do you want to learn perfumery? Just curious about your world. Colette answered with a smile, though her heart was filled with guilt and conflict. However, Marcel was not completely unguarded. As an experienced perfumer, he had an almost obsessive sensitivity to details. When he discovered that certain notes in the studio had been slightly moved and certain samples had been opened, he began to suspect. The truth revealed itself gradually, yet inevitably. Marcel had already noticed some subtle changes in the studio. The positions of certain sample bottles slightly adjusted, unfamiliar fingerprints on his notebooks, and even once, he found a strange hair stuck to his formula book. As a perfumer who dealt with minute details, Marcel was extremely sensitive to these subtle changes. He began installing surveillance cameras in the studio without telling anyone, including Colette. The footage showed her frequently entering the studio when he wasn't there, browsing through his notes, and even photographing certain pages. The decisive evidence appeared on a Thursday afternoon when Marcel returned home early and found Colette on his computer. The screen displayed his most private research folder regarding the core formula of Eternite perfume. What are you doing? Marcel asked calmly, concealing his inner shock and anger. Colette was startled, hurriedly closing the file. Just wanted to see your recent projects. Didn't we say we should learn more about each other's work? By logging into my computer with my password? Marcel's voice remained calm, but his eyes had grown sharp. The password is our wedding anniversary. I've never told anyone. At that moment, Colette's phone rang. The name displayed on the screen was Kazuki. Colette reflexively turned the phone screen down on the table, but it was already too late. "This isn't what you think," she tried to explain, but the trembling in her voice had already revealed everything. Marcel didn't explode, nor did he question further. He simply turned and quietly left the room. That night, he contacted a private detective, Renaud, a former police officer with extensive connections in Parisian social circles. "I need to understand all of my wife's activities, especially her dealings with a man named Kazuki," Marcel said calmly. "Money is not an issue, but I want the complete truth." A week later, Renaud handed him a detailed report containing photos, call records, hotel check-in information, and even recent business movements of Kazuki's company. The evidence was irrefutable. Colette had not only betrayed their marriage, but also attempted to steal his life's work to serve Kazuki's business ambitions. "Why?" Marcel asked after confirming all the facts. They sat in the living room, the Parisian night outside so beautiful, forming a stark contrast with the atmosphere inside. "I'm tired of being your accessory." Colette looked straight into his eyes. "For 35 years, I've lived in the shadow of Marcel's wife. Kazuki saw the real me, saw my value and potential. So you decided to steal my formula? As a stepping stone for your new life?" Marcel's voice carried deep disappointment. "You will never understand." Colette stood up. "Your world only has perfume, and I want more." "Then, you will get what you want," Marcel said calmly. "But not in my way." In the following months, Marcel pretended on the surface that everything was normal. He continued to work, continued to live with Colette, and even arranged this grand retirement party. But behind the scenes, he was carefully preparing his counterattack. Now, at this retirement party filled with shock, Marcel's plan was finally revealed. He not only publicly exposed Colette's betrayal, but also, by making public the formula for Eternite, destroyed Kazuki and Everglow's business plans. "You've ruined everything," Colette said in a low voice, her eyes filled with anger and shock. "No, dear." Marcel shook his head, his voice still calm. "You chose betrayal. I merely chose truth." When Marcel left the restaurant, he felt a strange release. 35 years of marriage ending in this way was heartbreaking, yet somehow inevitable. In the days to come, this scandal would sweep through the entire fashion world and perfume industry, but Marcel was ready to face the storm. Because he knew that a true perfume master could not only create beautiful scents, but also sense the subtlest changes, whether in the balance of fragrance notes or in the fluctuations of the human heart. The news of Marcel's retirement party swept through the entire Parisian fashion circle like a sudden storm. The next morning, the headlines of major newspapers and fashion magazines were all about this shocking event. Paris Fashion published the striking headline: "Perfume legend Marcel reveals wife's affair, discloses exclusive perfume formula," while European Fashion reported in detail under the title "Perfume and Betrayal: Fashion World's Most Shocking Marital Breakup." On social media, the tags Marcel Revenge and Eternite scandal quickly became trending topics, with thousands of netizens sharing comments about this dramatic event. Marcel is one of the greatest contemporary perfume masters, capable of creating intoxicatingly enchanting fragrances, wrote renowned perfume critic Bernard on his popular blog. But last night, he showed us that his understanding of the human heart is equally precise. He didn't shout, didn't lose control, but revealed betrayal in the most elegant way. This is true French revenge: elegant, precise, and lethal. The reaction within the industry was even more intense. Colleagues in the perfume world were both surprised by Marcel's decision to disclose the formula and admired his dignity and restraint in the face of betrayal. Many young perfumers published statements supporting Marcel on social media, while Lumiere's competitors began actively analyzing the disclosed formula. "This is an unprecedented industry shock," commented perfume historian Claire in a television interview. "In this industry full of trade secrets, voluntarily disclosing a revolutionary formula is equivalent to a painter burning his masterpiece." But Marcel seems to be telling us that some principles are more important than commercial interests. When Colette woke up, she found herself the focus of public discussion. Her phone kept vibrating, messages from friends, colleagues, and even media pouring in like a tide. She held back tears, pulled the curtains, avoiding the gaze of the outside world. Meanwhile, in Tokyo, Kazuki was facing an emergency meeting of the company's board of directors. Everglow's stock price plummeted after the market opened, and investors were filled with doubts about the company's future. "You guaranteed the board that we would obtain the exclusive formula," Finance Director Tanaka said coldly. "Now that the formula has been made public, all the R&D funds we invested have been wasted. The market situation is complex." Kazuki tried to remain calm. "But we can still utilize our technological advantage." Technological advantage? Marketing Director Yuki interrupted him. "Marcel's formula has been obtained by all competitors. We've lost our first mover advantage. Now we can only compete for a share in a saturated market." The board's vote of no confidence finally passed 7-2. Kazuki was suspended from his CEO position, pending an internal investigation. As he walked out of the boardroom, his once upright figure suddenly seemed much more stooped. Back in Paris, Marcel moved out of the apartment he had shared with Colette, temporarily staying in a friend's studio in Montmartre. The view was expansive here, overlooking all of Paris, seeming like the ideal place to contemplate the next step in life. "Are you all right?" asked his old friend Philippe. Philippe was a well-known perfume bottle designer. They had collaborated for nearly 30 years. "Better than I imagined," Marcel answered softly, gazing at the distant Eiffel Tower. "Sometimes, an ending is also a release. Do you know your actions have shaken the entire industry?" Philippe handed him a glass of whiskey. "Making that formula public. Many people think you're crazy." "Perhaps." Marcel smiled and took a sip of his drink. "But some things are more important than commercial value." "Like dignity?" Philippe guessed. "Like truth," Marcel corrected. "I wanted everyone to see the face of truth, no matter how ugly." In the weeks that followed, the situation continued to develop. Lumiere's board of directors launched an investigation into Colette, suspecting she had leaked company secrets by taking advantage of her position. Although there was no conclusive evidence that she had passed Lumiere's trade secrets to Everglow, her personal relationship with a competitor's CEO already constituted a serious conflict of interest. "The board has decided to suspend your position," Human Resources Director Jean-Paul informed her, "until the investigation is completed." "This is unfair," Colette protested. "I never leaked company secrets." "Perhaps, but your behavior has already severely damaged the company's image," Jean-Paul responded calmly. "For years, Lumiere has prided itself on high business ethics. Now, our beauty director is being reported in the headlines of all media for stealing her husband's intellectual property, causing immeasurable harm to the brand." When Colette left the office, once enthusiastic colleagues all avoided her gaze. The professional reputation she had built over 30 years collapsed in just a few days. Meanwhile, Marcel's Eternite formula caused a sensation in the perfume world. Perfumers marveled at its clever balance and innovative structure, with many attempting to replicate this masterpiece. "This is simply a work of genius," famous perfumer Sophie evaluated at an industry seminar. Marcel not only mastered the essence of traditional perfumery, but also incorporated unprecedented innovative elements. "This formula is at least 10 years ahead of the industry." However, the real turning point came in the third month after Marcel's retirement. The International Perfume Association announced that the Eternite formula would be included in the permanent collection of the Paris Perfume Museum, and Marcel would be awarded a Lifetime Achievement honor. Despite the controversial way it was disclosed, Marcel's contribution will forever be etched in perfume history, Association President Antoine said at the award ceremony. The Eternite formula demonstrates the ultimate possibilities of the art of perfumery. When Marcel stood on the podium, his gaze swept across the audience below. Colette was not there. Since that retirement party, they had not met again. All communication was conducted through lawyers. The divorce proceedings had been initiated, and property division negotiations were underway. According to French law, they needed to go through a cooling-off period and mediation procedures, a process that could take several months. "Thank you, everyone." Marcel began his acceptance speech, his voice calm yet powerful. "Perfume is a container of time, capable of sealing memories and awakening emotions. When I created Eternite, I hoped to capture the essence of eternity." Ironically, Life has taught me that nothing is truly eternal, except change itself. The audience erupted in applause. Many knew of the turmoil he had recently experienced. His calmness and dignity had won the industry's respect. After the award ceremony, Marcel received a text message from Colette. "Congratulations on your achievement. Can we talk?" Marcel stared at the phone screen for a long time, finally replying, "There's nothing left to talk about." He knew Colette's current situation. Lumiere had terminated her after an internal investigation, giving the official reason as personal behavior inconsistent with company values. In the tightly connected small circle of the fashion world, she found it difficult to secure a new position. Most companies were unwilling to risk hiring an executive with such negative news. Kazuki's situation was no better. Everglow's stock price had fallen by 30%, and the company lost the trust of many investors. The board finally decided to remove him as CEO, appointing an interim leader to rebuild the company's image. Worse still, the formula Marcel had publicly released wasn't the complete version. It was accurate enough for competitors to understand its basic principles, but lacked certain key proportions and special processing techniques. The crystallization of Marcel's decades of experience that couldn't be simply written down. As a result, Everglow's hastily launched perfume series, inspired by Eternite, met with a cold reception in the market. Critics unanimously felt these products lacked soul and were pale imitations of the original. "You deliberately left gaps," Philippe said to Marcel during a dinner. "That published formula wasn't complete, was it?" Marcel smiled slightly. Completeness is a relative concept. Words cannot convey feelings. Formulas cannot replicate inspiration. "Was that your revenge?" Philippe asked curiously. "It was a lesson," Marcel corrected. "A lesson about respect and originality." When autumn arrived, Marcel decided to return to Provence. He bought a countryside villa near the small town where he had worked in his youth, surrounded by lavender fields and olive trees. The air here was permeated with natural fragrances, a paradise for perfumers. Just before moving, on his last night in Paris, Marcel received a letter from Kazuki requesting a meeting. In the letter, the Japanese businessman claimed to want to explain and apologize. Marcel laughed coldly as he tore the paper into pieces and threw it in the trash. He had no interest in traders, nor did he need any explanations or apologies. "Did he contact you?" Philippe asked upon hearing this, while they were dining at one of Marcel's favorite small bars. "Yes, wanted to meet." Marcel cut the steak on his plate, his movements precise and cold. "I refused." "Aren't you curious about what he wanted to say?" Philippe was somewhat surprised. "No," Marcel said firmly. "Traders don't deserve my time or attention. Whatever he says won't change what has already happened." "There are rumors that Everglow is facing a serious crisis," Philippe said softly. "The stock price has plummeted by 40%. Investors are withdrawing their funds. Kazuki might lose his company soon." "The business world is that cruel," Marcel said without sympathy. "When you build an empire based on deception and betrayal, it will eventually collapse." After dinner, they walked along the Seine. The Parisian night was so beautiful, with lights dancing on the water and the Eiffel Tower glowing golden in the distance. "You know what?" Marcel stopped, looking at the water. "I had countless times imagined spending the rest of my life with Colette. We would grow old together, watch our grandchildren grow, reminisce about our past together. Now all of that has become a bubble. Do you regret it?" Philippe asked. "Making that formula public?" "Not one bit," Marcel said firmly. "It was my response to betrayal and my defense of my own dignity. I won't let anyone trample on it, not even a wife of 35 years. "And the future?" Philippe asked softly. "A fresh start." Marcel smiled, but that smile contained not a trace of warmth. No traitors, no false promises, only authenticity and the pure self. Just then, Marcel's phone rang. The screen displayed an unknown number. Out of some intuition, he answered the call. "Marcel." Kazuki's voice came from the other end of the phone. "Please give me 5 minutes." Marcel wanted to hang up immediately, but some curiosity made him continue listening. 5 minutes, no more. "Can we talk in person?" Kazuki requested. "Unnecessary," Marcel said coldly. "Say what you have to say over the phone." "I just wanted to say that I never truly loved Colette." Kazuki's voice carried a strange arrogance. "It was all a business strategy. I needed your formula. She was the most convenient path. Marcel felt a surge of anger, but he controlled himself. So you admit you used her feelings? Business is business, Kazuki said coldly. Feelings are just tools to achieve a goal. To be honest, I thought you would understand this, as a businessman. I am an artist first, then a businessman, Marcel corrected, his voice icy. That's why I made that formula public, rather than trying to use it to gain more benefits. That was your choice, Kazuki said, with obvious disdain in his voice. I just wanted you to know that Colette meant nothing to me. Now I've lost everything, and so has she. We are both victims of your revenge. No, you are victims of your own choices, Marcel said with determination. You chose deception, she chose betrayal. Now you must both face the consequences. There was silence on the phone for a moment. Then Kazuki said, You think you've won, don't you? This isn't about winning or losing, Marcel said calmly. This is about truth and choices. Goodbye, Kazuki. I hope never to see you again. With that, he hung up the phone and turned it off. The night breeze caressed his cheeks, carrying away the last trace of hesitation and uncertainty. Tomorrow, he would leave Paris for Provence, starting a completely new life. A life without betrayal and deception. After this conversation, Marcel moved to Provence as planned. He began a new life, building a small studio next to his countryside villa, occasionally teaching perfumery courses to enthusiastic students. His days were peaceful and fulfilling, far from the hustle and bustle of Paris and the turbulence of the fashion world. In the spring of the following year, a letter from Paris arrived at Marcel's villa. There was no sender's name on the envelope, but he immediately recognized Colette's handwriting. He almost wanted to throw it directly into the fireplace, but something made him hesitate. Finally, he opened the envelope, prepared to face any possible manipulation or tricks. Marcel, the letter began coldly, without any affectionate terms. I'm not writing this letter to ask for forgiveness. That's impossible, we both know. I just want you to know that I still believe my initial choice was correct. Our marriage had become a constraint rather than nourishment. You were immersed in your perfume world, and I needed passion and understanding. Kazuki at least gave me a moment of release, although it ultimately proved to be an illusion. Now, I have lost everything: career, reputation, marriage, but I don't regret pursuing the life I wanted. Perhaps it's my arrogance, but I would rather be my authentic self than submit to the perfect wife role that society expects. I know you're doing well in Provence. The media occasionally reports on your new works and new life. And I am trying to rebuild my life in Paris, although with great difficulty. In any case, we each chose our own path. Now we must walk it alone. Colette. Marcel finished reading the letter, a cold smile appearing on his lips. Even after everything, Colette was still so self-centered, still refusing to acknowledge her real mistake. Not the pursuit of passion, but betrayal and deception. She hadn't even realized that it was her own choices that ruined her life. Without any hesitation, he tore the letter into pieces and threw them into the fireplace. The flames quickly devoured the paper pieces, just as time would eventually devour all pain and betrayal. But one thing was certain: Marcel would never forgive betrayal and would never let Colette back into his life. That night, he began composing a new perfume in his studio. Unlike before, this time it wasn't for commercial purposes or others' appreciation, but purely for his own satisfaction. He chose cedar as the base note, representing strength and independence, added the freshness of bergamot, symbolizing rebirth, and finally a touch of warm sandalwood, symbolizing inner peace. What is this? His new assistant Amelie asked curiously. She was a local young girl passionate about perfumery. A new beginning, Marcel simply answered, naming the perfume Resolution, Determination. In his second year in Provence, Marcel received an unexpected visitor, Antoine, the director of the International Perfume Museum. We want to permanently collect the complete formula of Eternite, Antoine said in Marcel's studio. But not the version you made public. Rather, the true, complete formula. Marcel was somewhat surprised. Why now? Because it's the work of the century, Antoine said sincerely. We've studied the already published formula and found that although it's brilliant, it obviously lacks some key elements. Only you can provide the truly complete version. Marcel thought for a moment, then nodded. I'll give you the real formula, but with one condition. It must be kept sealed for 50 years until I and all those directly involved are no longer in this world. Antoine agreed to this condition. The next day, Marcel personally wrote down the complete Eternite formula, including those special processing techniques and subtle proportion adjustments he had never told anyone. These were the crystallization of his decades of experience, impossible to simply write down or store in a computer. Meanwhile, in Paris, Colette's life had fallen into difficulty. After losing her high-paying position, she was forced to sell most of her luxury items and investments, moving to a small apartment. Her former social circle had almost completely excluded her. Invitations no longer arrived at her door. Phones no longer rang. She tried contacting old friends for job opportunities, but most avoided the topic with various excuses. "I don't regret it," she told herself in front of the mirror, but the emptiness in her eyes already revealed the wavering in her heart. In Tokyo, Kazuki faced an even more severe situation. After Everglow was hostile taken over by a competitor, he not only lost his position as CEO, but also faced multiple business lawsuits. The board accused him of making decisions that severely damaged the company for personal gain, demanding huge compensation. His once luxurious apartment was seized by the bank. His luxury yacht and private plane had to be sold to pay legal fees. The most ironic thing was that Kazuki still didn't understand his mistake. In an interview with a business magazine, he attributed everything to an unfair competitive environment and industrial espionage, refusing to acknowledge his betrayal and deception. "I just saw a market opportunity," he told reporters. Any businessman would have done the same. But the market and the public had already made their judgment. The value of Everglow's stock fell by 90%. Kazuki's personal fortune almost completely disappeared. His business acumen and strategic vision, which he had once prided himself on, now became the laughingstock of the industry. 5 years later, Marcel held a small gathering at his villa in Provence to celebrate his 70th birthday. Surrounding him were true friends and young people passionate about the art of perfumery. He had established a small perfumery school, passing on the knowledge and experience of his lifetime, except for the complete formula of Eternite. That was a secret belonging to history. That day, in the Paris evening newspaper, there was an inconspicuous small news item. Former luxury brand executive Colette was forced to auction off her last jewelry collection due to financial problems. In the photo, she, once radiant, looked aged and haggard, the confidence in her eyes replaced by a sense of defeat. Meanwhile, in Tokyo, Kazuki was trying to rebuild his image at a business forum, but almost no one was willing to listen to him speak. Afterward, he walked alone on the streets of Tokyo, passing by a specialized perfume store where the window displayed Marcel's new creation, Resolution. Back in the Provence studio, Marcel was guiding students in composing a new perfume. Sunlight filtered through the window, spilling onto his silver hair, adding a serene glow. "What is most important in perfumery?" a student asked. "Honesty," Marcel answered, his voice firm and clear. "Honesty with sense, honesty with yourself, honesty with life. Because both in perfume and in life, false components will eventually be revealed by time." On his shelf, a perfume that was never sold rested quietly, with a handwritten label, Verite, Truth. This was what he composed on the night after the retirement party, also the last time he thought about Colette and that betrayal. Since then, he chose to look forward rather than dwell on the past. Not forgiveness, but decisive cutting off. In the world of perfumes, the most precious thing is not rare ingredients or ingenious formulas, but the ability to perceive, record, and release emotions. Marcel lost a marriage but regained his dignity and freedom. Perhaps this was the most important discovery of his life. True eternity exists in our adherence to principles and our zero tolerance for betrayal. The traitors paid the price. Colette lost her career, status, and dignity. Kazuki lost his company, fortune, and reputation. Their choices led to their downfall, like perfume sprayed in the air, finally leaving only a bitter aftertaste. And Marcel was reborn from the ashes of betrayal, stronger and freer than ever. He was not only a master of perfumes, but also the master of his own destiny. With a resolute attitude, he showed the world, for betrayal, never compromise, for deception, never forgive. If this story has resonated with you, Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more fascinating content. We look forward to seeing you in our next story.